iron categories and what do they mean? It's very easy to determine what muscle-back, blade style head or game improvement means. Player's distance is a category of iron that's come in over the last 7 to 10 years, but it encompasses so many different head styles. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 3 heads, look at each one from a performance point of view, and actually look at what they actually do for you and why you might use each one. But it's become a category that's very hard to really pin down what it means. So hence, looking at a range of heads that fall into this category and giving as many pointers as possible as to which one may suit you and why. So starting off with TITLEIST T150. So this is really one step into this player's distance category from the more muscle back sort of CB control based iron heads where you've got some tech. And I think that's really the key thing. Player's distance, the distance bit means we need a little bit of tech and a little bit of extra ball speed off the face, a little bit of help. So T150 is very, very clean from a head shape. New top line, very almost sort of blade-like in the way it looks. They've really created a very thin top line there. So it's going to appeal to a lot of players who want that really neat, clean, slim look. We now have some tungsten heel and toe, which gives a bit of stability off center. And if I angle this slightly, you'll see in the back that little channel that sits behind the face from 7 iron up. What that is, that's a hollowed out chamber that allows them to put a little bit of face tech in, get a little bit of reverb off the face, a little bit of reaction off the face, a little bit of extra ball speed. So let's see how it performs, go through the numbers and see what it gives us. So each of these heads I'm going to test with my own shaft. This is the Oban, the CT115. So we get, it's suited to me. I'm going to try and keep the speed a little bit more moderate. I'm normally, when I'm swinging well, kind of pushing 90 miles. And I'm going to keep this more 84, 85 because it's a little bit more general across golf. It's a little bit more realistic. So very, very neat looking head. You know, you could almost believe it was a blade looking at this down behind the ball. Still retains a very solid feel. I think that's really critical to this the player side of this category is, you know, a blade, a muscle back has all the mass behind the contact point. It feels really solid at the hit. And this still retains a lot of that. So the tungsten stops a little bit of twist and certainly feels like the head stays with the contact. And by that I mean you don't really feel any deflection, a little less twisting. But you can sense a little bit of pop off the face. So I'm going to get another couple of hits with this to get an average. But it's certainly a head that gives quite a lot of feedback as well. And I think that's, you know, players' irons, you know, the players aspect means you want to know. You want to know when you miss-hit it, because actually, you know, the better player, kind of, that feedback helps dial the strike in, so it helps you find the center of the face. As you move more away from the blade style, you don't want the player to know that they missed the face quite as much, the confidence element that can give. So starting at this end, it very much gives you that sensation of where you've struck the face, and that can, so in many respects, can help you find the middle a little bit more if that's something that you like. So I'll do one more with this, and then we'll switch it over. You know, definitely feel a little bit of little bit of pop off the face. I play a blade, so I don't get any of that with my own irons. And so you definitely feel a little bit of energy off the face. That channel in the back gives a little bit of a higher pitch note, a bit of extra kind of a sensation of yardage and ball speed, a little bit of extra stability. So that's step one into the player's distance category. So next step into the player's distance category, we've now moved a little bit further away from the player's end of it and partway more towards the distance end. We've now got a hollow construction head. So this MIZUNO, the 245, it's still, you know, very classic looking head, almost blade-like because of that nice sort of flat back to it. But it's hollowed out, so if I turn it toe end on, you'll see the thickness of the head there. That means that is actually, so there's nothing in the middle. But what that allows them to do is you stiffen some of the perimeter of the frame. That allows more of the energy to go back into the face, creates a little bit more ball speed, but also drags the mass away from the center mass away from the face. So it's like doing that with this stance. It resists twists a little bit more, gives a little bit more forgiveness. But with this head, what we're not doing is going to a face design and a structure that cannons the flight forward. We're taking that one step away from that T150. So, but the focus on this is also retaining some of that softness and feel. So, like the T150, we'll give this a hit, compare it, and see how that comes out. So notably a little bit of a thicker top line. When the moment any head goes hollow, there has to be a bit more thickness where that top line kind of wraps around and there's a join in the construction. But it's still a pretty clean looking head. Hence the MP moniker on it, meaning kind of Players Series. So noticeably a little bit more to that note. You know, the hollow body, effectively the sound rattles around inside the head a little bit more, and it just peaks up the sound and the pitch of notes that comes off the face. So you know, part of that design, that sound is feel, is designed to feel a bit faster off the face. So the construction will affect the note. You're never going to get a hollow-bodied head that feels like a solid head. It's just not physically doable because of the construction and the materials that are involved in it. But having said that, it's not a harsh, clicky sound. So, like the T150, we'll get a couple more. So still picks the ball flight up well, but doesn't have a, you know, it's still quite a toned down sound, even though it is a higher pitch. So it's not a harsh contact. And definitely from a feedback point of view, I've lost a little bit of that definitive, that stuck on this part of the head feel that I got off the T150. And that's part of that progression. You're working on a balance in this player's distance category of feel and forgiveness. And it's where on that scale it sits as to how much of each you get. But the feedback off the face is definitely something that develops through this range. But there's also that extra little bit of sense of pop off the face. It feels a faster club head. Feels that the ball's coming off a little bit quicker. And as we go through the data and compare it once we've done the final head, I think that'll be something that's interesting to see whether the sensation of the strike and the reality really kind of melds together and the two match one another. So we'll move on to the final head in this category we're going to have a look at, give that a test out now. So let's start off head number 3, giving this a hit first and then talking about the head. Now that's a totally different feel. So what we've gone to now is it's still a hollow body construction, but this is now taking the weighting, the face design, I guess the impetus of the head a little bit further. This is very much a head that's designed around power. This is a strong hitting head. It's still, with playing the I series, which the I series is their Verticom's Players series. So when it goes to the more game improvement, that becomes the G series. But this is very much blurring the lines between a distance iron and the player's end of it. This is right on that top end. And so to hit with, one, again, it feels more hollow again. There's a little bit more reverb, a little bit more, sounds a bit of an odd hollowness to the sound, but that really feels like it kicks off the face hard. It's a harder note, a higher pitched note. And again, construction, the materials used, the harder you go in the frame, the higher pitched and the harder that sound's going to be off the club bass, because the materials affect the note and the sound and therefore the feel of the club head. So this has got lots of weight. If I show you the tone on here, lots of weight down the bottom here. So there's a bit more of an exaggeration of weight placement on this head. So weight low makes it easier to get it into the bottom of get the mass into the bottom of the ball, helps to increase a little bit of launch, but generally tends to bring the spin down, which is great for distance. Not quite so good for stopping power and consistency, but this is back to that sliding scale that we were talking about before of what you gain in ball speed and strength of flight and distance. Something has to give, and that is the control aspect, the stopping power, the knowledge that this club is going to land at that exact distance. There's a little bit of a spread front to back, but you gain off center. So again, another couple of hits with this. Again, that harder sound off the club face. With that, again, there's that progression of I've lost a bit of the feel for where I've hit it. I know it's gone. I know that's come off the face pretty well. So certainly a lot of help in getting that ball, getting consistency of ball speed off the face and not dropping off performance if you misstrike it. But that spin is going to be something I'd expect to see when we go back to the data that's going to have a bit of a progression as well. Let's do the one more here. I'm going to redo that. Was a horrific strike. So let's do the one more hit here. have a look at the data. So quite interesting going through the data here. As I've hit a few more shots, my club speed has crept up a little bit. So as I've done a bit more swinging, my natural speed's kicked in slightly more. So there is a slight progression in club speed, and I will make reference to that when we look at the distance. I will make reference to it and kind of normalize the yardage based on if my swing speed was the same, what it would do to the overall distance. So, but what we can see, what's quite interesting with this is, on screen here, we've got, I'll use the mouse, is actually the efficiency, the smash factor between the three heads hasn't gone up. Now, you might say, well, that's actually quite surprising. The ping head is a slightly stronger loft. You definitely expect versus a T150 to the ping head to get more ball speed efficiency out of it. But I think this goes back to being able to dial in strike. My consistency of strike and consistency of ball speed, you know, the tolerance number here with the two more forgiving heads is worse than with the least forgiving head. So for me, I don't lose any performance from a strike point of view by losing forgiveness. I actually gain it, which is slightly counterintuitive, but that's golf. But there I'm trying to get a particular feel out of the club, but I need to know where I'm striking it. It was actually a lot of golfers gain from not necessarily having that sensitivity of feel and actually getting away with something and not realizing they've actually mishit it that much. That's where the confidence can really make a big difference. But bar the club speed going up, we'd see ball speed wouldn't really vary much. So that's one aspect where, again, you've got to test this yourself to see which one performs best and whether there is a gain to be had from this. You know, other players might find that the ball speed drops off with the T150 versus the ping, the i530. And that's where you've got to judge where do you need to sit within this range of heads to optimize performance and consistency of performance. Looking then at the flight side of things, this is the other bit that's affected quite a lot by the construction of the head. So the T150, you know, is a marginally higher launch. Now it is a marginally higher loft. You know, 28 degrees loft on the T150, 27.5 on the 245 Mizuno. It's 25.5 on the ping. So actually, there's only 1 degree of difference in launch angle between the T150 and the i530. But this is then in the spin where there's a big difference. 4,100 with the i530. 5,000 with the T150, and the Mizuno sits 2/3 of the way towards the T150 with a kind of a moderate spin level. This is again one of the critical aspects to working out where within this category of head, this broad category of head, is it important for you from a performance point of view to get it right? Because you could play something that is potentially too weak in flight with the T150, where the ping and the Mizuno would give a stronger, more penetrating flight, or for me, you know, the ping's coming in with, you know, actually about 20% lower spin than I want from that part of the bag. So it comes in hot. So actually then that means at the top end of the irons, you lose distance gain. You're going to see big gaps at the bottom, and then carry-wise, those distances narrowing up at the top end. So the balance of the flight is really critical as well. So yes, there's a distance gain. The loft goes down, the spin goes down, and for 3 miles an hour ball speed, we'd be looking at kind of 5 yards. So if we normalise the 5 yards, we bring the T150 from 171 up to 176, you're still 6 yards longer out of the ping, proportionally. So there is a gain, but the lower loft and the lower spin give me that. Other players might see a little bit more where the greater forgiveness, the greater margin of error, and potentially greater ball speed gain come in there as well. But the way the ball is getting to the end result, the feedback, the ability to dial strike in, these are all layers within this category that will determine whether a particular head gives a player consistency of performance, both ends of the scale, due to forgiveness or due to spin. So it is a category of head that, since it's come into the industry, it's an important one, and it's one where every single brand will have a head that slots into this category. But they may have 2 bordering on 3 heads. So take someone like Mizuno, you've got the MP243, which is more like the T150. It's a blade style with a little bit of help. Then you've got the 245 that sits in the middle as a hollow construction. And with the latest launch, you could even put the JPX, the Hot Metal Pro, the latest Hot Metal Pro into that category as well. So there's a lot of options in there, and depending on what visual you like, what feel you want, what margin of error you want, what spin level you want, it's quite a complex sector of the industry that there are lots of layers that you've got to layer up and make sure you've got them all covered in order to get the best balance of performance. There is one to be had for everyone who's sits into this category, but the key thing is testing heads, looking at the flight, looking at the course you play. You know, if you're on a windy course, you might want a slightly lower spin as a natural flight. If you're playing a kind of firm, fast, through the air-based course, you might want a little bit more flight as your natural ball flight. But there will be a head from multiple manufacturers that sits within this category for you. And then from there it goes to subjective issues, feel, looks, could be brand. They're all important to make you feel good and confident about what you've got in the bag. So use the numbers and use somewhere that has options to test to really dial in which head is going to work for you and why. An experienced fitter will be able to tell you why a certain construction will work well for you and why it delivers these results. But there are so many out there for you to dial into, but this category needs testing in order to get the balance of shot right for you. But there are a heck of a lot of options out there, and someone like this where you've got those to test out is a great way to find the best head for you in the player's distance category.